of the control of the central government. The civil war in Syria and lack of governing authority in Iraq created the perfect opportunity for the rapid growth of the Islamic State, or ISIS. ISIS defies both of Kissinger's principles, and flagrantly. ISIS is not a nation state, but it operates like one, both in its structure of governance and through its seizure of assets and land. ISIS has no allegiance or reverence for international institutions or their norms. 4 years ago, ISIS was an offshoot of al-Qaeda in Iraq. They were certainly a dangerous enemy, hell-bent on killing U.S. troops in Iraq and creating disruption and upheaval. They were not the massive, well-financed, well-coordinated, expanding regional power that they are now. We have to return to a place where national security needs dictate our national security spending, and not vice versa. We cannot balance our budget on the backs of our military. We should not, because that puts our security at risk. But mathematically, we cannot balance our budget through defense cuts alone. This philosophical and political dilemma is at the heart of the debate surrounding the U.S.'s proper role in the world today. We're experiencing a tug-of-war between those who yearn for the power projection of the Reagan era that fostered the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union, and those who believe that the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan exhausted the U.S.'s credibility, thus its capacity for successful intervention. Going forward, Congress must prevent the damaging cuts to our defense budget imposed by the sequester. That is the least we can do, both Congress and the President, to ensure our military has the resources it needs to keep us safe. In an era where we face the growing threats from ISIS, an increasingly aggressive Russia, an Iran and a North Korea dead set on getting nuclear weapons, and the continued threat of Islamic extremism and terrorism, allowing these cuts to happen is unthinkable. More than ever, it requires the leadership of the President and both parties in Congress to ensure adequate funding to keep our nation safe. Of course, funding alone is not enough. We need a president that will come forward with a national security strategy that makes clear to the American people, to our allies, and to our enemies where we stand. No more meaningless red lines. We need a strategy that has a real hope of defeating ISIS. We need a president with a long-term strategy to contain Russia's aggression. And above all, we need a White House that makes clear to Iran that any attempt to build a nuclear weapon will be met with the full strength and might of the United States. Thank you again for allowing me to speak to you tonight, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Party of Florida quarterly meetings are held and set a record with attendance. Built a digital infrastructure that even the Democrats envy. He announced a stellar finance committee and is beating the Democrats at their own game of social media. Scheduling and including bilingual Facebook and Twitter pages, so must GOP. And there are now more than 183,000 page likes on the party webpage. That's an organic accomplishment, reaching millions in Florida and social media in every single week. And of course, it doesn't cost anything. Built out a large data sharing platform with all 67 counties, and with a year still to go, has signed up more than 1,000 volunteers on the party website to deliver the state to the Republican nominee. It is my proud pleasure to introduce Blaise Ingoglia, Republican Party of Florida Chairman.
Let me use this. Can everyone hear me? Better? Okay. I'm in a little bit of a disadvantage. I'm Italian and I use my hands a lot, so I need my hands first. First, before we get started, I do want to just acknowledge and thank the two chairmen before you. And part of that stellar finance committee, this gentleman sitting right here to the right. And thank you for everything that you have done with all your guidance in the past. And we're going to be asking you to raise a bunch of money for us this election cycle. And to Chairman Barnett, thank you for everything that you have done, and I know how hard and tirelessly that you work. I noticed that there is a bar in the back, and there's a bartender, and I will encourage you guys to drink. The more you drink, the better this speech will be. I, of course, cannot drink. I am allergic to alcohol. I break out in handcuffs. It's the darndest thing you've ever seen. Now, for those of you who have a smartphone, there is some news that came across the wire that I'm sure you're not going to like very much. You might have gotten a Fox News alert, and yep, there it is. The Supreme Court has just ruled, unfortunately again, a bad ruling, that we are no longer allowed to have a nativity scene nor a Christmas tree in our nation's capital. Now, this isn't for any religious reasons, they just couldn't find 3 wise men in D.C. You can clap. Now, a search for a virgin continues. But they did, however, find more than enough asses to fill that stable. So, the future of politics, the future of the state of Florida, and where do we go? And I will tell you that normally when I come up and I give speeches in front of crowds, I have a very methodical way of giving these speeches. I know what I want to say, how I'm going to say it, when I'm going to say it, why I'm going to say it. But it got me thinking, sitting down and listening to the speakers, that there's a lot of work that the Republican Party has to do. And I will tell you that from my standpoint, the future of the Republican Party is unwritten. The future of the Republican Party is what we choose it to be. The future of the Republican Party isn't dead. It's lively. And we make that choice of what the future of the party is going to be. And you know, I've heard Chairman Dinerstein speak, and you know, there was a wise man, and it reminded me of something a wise man once said. And he said that if we can capture about 1/3 of the Jewish vote and 20% of the black vote, there would be no such thing as a Democrat Party. And that's true, and that wise man is sitting to my right now. I heard him say that about 2 years ago. And it really got me thinking in a different way. And I think that's what the future of politics is we all have to think differently in order to be successful. We cannot continue doing the same old things and expect to be successful in these elections. Now, the chairman had spoken, and I had spoken at length with Chairman Barnett about getting out and getting those votes that we traditionally don't get. And I did it as a campaign, and I don't know if you guys know, but not only am I the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida, I'm also a state representative representing House District 35 in the Florida House. And I sort of practice what I preach. I used to get out there all the time and say that Republicans, we need to start going to the places that traditionally we feel uncomfortable. Half of the battle is just showing up and telling people that you actually care about their futures and what's important to them and their families and their communities. And I agree with Chairman Dinerstein wholeheartedly that our polling sometimes is absolutely horrible. We start talking about things that are important in macro senses. We need to start talking about things that are important inside the communities on micro terms. Do we care that 72% of the people are against tax cuts? Or is it more important to know which 72%, their names, their voter ID numbers, which of them are against tax increases? Because I guarantee you that they're not all white. So when I started listening and thinking about the future of politics and saying that it's unwritten, a lot of the things that I was going to get up here and I was going to talk about had to do with technology. Because I think technology is an integral part of going forward in campaigning. But what is equally important, and perhaps more so, is reaching out to that constituency where we have traditionally failed to go before. We need to start visiting a lot of the communities where we wouldn't go before. Now, I will tell you, as a candidate, the way I walked and knocked doors was this. I would have the campaign volunteers and the campaign staff knock on all the 404 and 304 Republicans, the super Republicans, and I personally, I knocked on every NPA door, the independent door, and Democrat doors. Because that's where every time we get a Democrat vote, it's two. We're taking one out of their column and putting in one in our column. And I will tell you, we are all people of the same God. We all want the same things for our families. What do we want? We want a great education. We want to have upward mobility. We want the chance to start our own business. We want our kids to go to the best schools. That is not a white issue. That is not a black issue. That is a human issue.